I couldn't sleep. Again. The red digits on the alarm clock mocked me. 2:47 a.m. While my wife Marta's side of the bed remained cold and untouched. Her latest business trip had stretched into its fourth day, and something about this one reeked worse than week-old fish. "It's complicated, Andy," she'd said before leaving, her eyes avoiding mine as she packed that expensive leather suitcase I'd bought her for Christmas. The same suitcase that should have been upstairs in our bedroom closet, not hidden in the guest room like some dirty secret. My name's Andy Mercer, and I've spent the last 23 years thinking I knew my wife. I'm a financial systems analyst. Basically, I troubleshoot other people's money problems for a living. It's made me pretty good at spotting inconsistencies, and lately, Marta's story had more holes than Swiss cheese. I padded downstairs in my boxers, the hardwood floor cold against my bare feet. The house felt different when she wasn't here. Quieter, but somehow more honest. Our smart home setup hummed softly around me, all those connected devices we'd installed to make life easier. The irony wasn't lost on me that the same technology designed to bring us together was about to tear us apart. The guest room door creaked as I pushed it open. There, shoved behind winter coats that hadn't seen daylight since March, sat a second suitcase. My hands trembled slightly as I unzipped it. Lingerie I'd never seen, a burner phone, and a stack of receipts from restaurants I couldn't afford on my salary. The burner phone lit up when I pressed the power button. No password protection. Marta always was too confident for her own good. The text thread with someone named D made my stomach clench. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Victoria says the coast is clear." Andy's working late again. He never suspects anything. "This weekend at the lake house? I'll tell him it's another client dinner." Victoria, my wife's sister, the recently divorced real estate agent who'd been filling Marta's head with poison about living your best life and you deserve better than settling. I should have seen this coming. I grabbed my laptop and opened the Find My app, another one of those safety features we'd installed on each other's phones. Marta's location showed a blinking dot at 1247 Lakeshore Drive. A quick Google search revealed it was a $5 million rental property. Way out of our league, but apparently not out of Derek Vaughn's. Derek Vaughn. I'd heard that name before, whispered in Marta's phone conversations that stopped abruptly when I entered the room. A real estate developer with more money than sense, and a reputation for flashy parties and flashier women. The drive across town took 20 minutes, through empty streets. My 15-year-old Honda looked pathetic next to the Porsches and BMWs lining the circular driveway of the lakefront mansion. Lights blazed from every window, and the sound of laughter and music drifted across the manicured lawn. I parked 3 blocks away and walked back, staying in the shadows of ancient oak trees that lined the property. The backyard opened onto a private beach, complete with an infinity pool that seemed to pour directly into the lake. And there, illuminated by underwater lights like some twisted theater performance, was my wife. Marta wore a red bikini I'd never seen before, her dark hair wet and slicked back as she pressed herself against a man who definitely wasn't me. Derek Vaughn looked exactly like his LinkedIn photo. Silver hair, artificially white teeth, and the kind of tan that came from too much time on yachts instead of working for a living. Victoria lounged nearby in a deck chair, cocktail in hand, playing director to this little drama. She'd orchestrated this whole thing, I realized. The divorce had made her bitter, and misery truly did love company. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The video quality was surprisingly good for nighttime. All those security lights Derek had installed to keep out people like me worked in my favor. I captured nearly 5 minutes of footage. Marta and Derek kissing, groping, whispering things that made them both laugh like teenagers. Then I made my mistake. Stepping backward for a better angle, my foot caught on a decorative garden stone. I stumbled, cursing under my breath, and motion sensor lights blazed to life across the patio. Derek's head snapped up like a hunting dog catching a scent. "Hey, someone's out there!" I ran. 47 years old, and I ran like a college sprinter, my heart hammering against my ribs as shouts erupted behind me. Security lights chased me across the lawn, but I made it to the driveway before anyone could get close enough for a clear look. Derek's silver Porsche sat there like a monument to everything wrong with this situation. I pulled my keys from my pocket and dragged them along the driver's side, leaving a jagged scratch from headlight to taillight. The metallic screech was deeply satisfying. Situationally, that's a deductible a-hole, I muttered, then jogged back to my car before security could arrive. The next morning brought a text from Marta. Flying back tonight, we need to talk. I almost laughed. We certainly did need to talk, but probably not about what she had in mind. Mrs. Gosling from next door was already stationed at her front window when I stepped onto the porch to grab the newspaper. She was our neighborhood's unofficial intelligence network, a 70-year-old retired librarian who knew everyone's business before they did. "Morning, Andy," she called out, watering plants that looked suspiciously overwatered. Marta's still traveling?" "Business trip," I replied, walking over to the fence that separated our properties. "You know how demanding her clients can be." Mrs. Gosling's eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh yes, very demanding. I saw her at Murphy's bar Tuesday night, with that handsome fellow. Looked like quite the business meeting." Murphy's bar was a local dive that served overpriced drinks to people trying too hard to look successful. It was also exactly the kind of place Marta would choose for an affair. Public, enough to seem innocent, dark enough to hide guilty faces. "Tall fellow, silver hair?" I asked casually. "That's the one. Very friendly with your sister-in-law, too." Victoria introduced them. From what I could hear, they seemed quite familiar with each other. I thanked Mrs. Gosling and went back inside, my mind racing. This wasn't some spontaneous fling. Victoria had set this up deliberately. The question was how long it had been going on and what exactly they were planning. My daughter Amelia called around noon. At 20, she was sharp as a tack and had inherited my suspicious nature, along with Marta's dark hair. "Dad, something weird is going on with Mom," she said without preamble. "She's been asking me strange questions about your work schedule, your computer passwords, stuff like that. And she's been hanging out with Aunt Victoria way more than usual." "What kind of questions about work? Like when you're in the office versus working from home, whether you keep files on your laptop, if you've seemed stressed about anything?" I told her you seemed fine. But she kept pushing. A cold realization settled in my stomach. This wasn't just about an affair. They were planning something bigger. Marta knew I made decent money and had access to client accounts. She also knew I'd been dealing with some compliance issues at work. Nothing serious, but enough to make me vulnerable if someone wanted to cause trouble. I spent the afternoon setting up my own surveillance network. Our home security system was connected to my phone, and I had legitimate access to Marta's work computer through our shared cloud storage. If she wanted to play games, I'd make sure I knew the rules. That evening, I prepared for Marta's return like a general planning a battle. I moved her suitcase from the guest room back to our bedroom, printed out screenshots from the burner phone, and practiced my poker face in the bathroom mirror. She walked through the door at 8:30, looking guilty and defiant in equal measure. Her hair was different, shorter, more stylish, and she wore a new dress I'd never seen before. "We need to talk," she said, dropping her purse on the kitchen counter. "I couldn't agree more," I replied, leaning against the door frame with my arms crossed. "How was your business trip?" "It was fine, productive." She couldn't meet my eyes. "Andy, I've been thinking about us, about our marriage. Things haven't been good for a while." "Haven't they? I thought we were doing okay." "Sure, we've had our rough patches, but what marriage doesn't? That's just it. We're settling. We're both settling for okay when we could have something better." I recognized Victoria's words coming out of my wife's mouth. Something better? Like what? Like being with someone who truly understands us, someone who appreciates what we bring to a relationship. Someone like Derek Vaughn? The color drained from her face. For a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then her expression hardened. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Tall guy, silver hair, drives a Porsche with a fresh key scratch down the side. Ring any bells? You've been following me? I've been wondering why my wife of 23 years suddenly needs so many business trips and comes home smelling like expensive cologne that isn't mine." Marta's jaw tightened. "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Andy. You're paranoid, controlling. You can't stand the thought that I might have a life outside of this house. A life that includes screwing real estate developers in lakefront mansions. How dare you? How dare I what? How dare I notice that you've been lying to me for months? How dare I care that my wife is planning to leave me for some flashy a-hole with more money than brains?" She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact instant she decided to go on the offensive instead of trying to deny it. Yes, I'm seeing Derek. Yes, I'm leaving you. And yes, I'm taking half of everything we own, including your precious retirement accounts. We'll see about that. You can't stop me, Andy. I've already talked to a lawyer. I know exactly what I'm entitled to. Entitled. That's a perfect word for you these days. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. I'm staying at Victoria's tonight. We'll discuss the details later. Give Derek my regards, I called after her, and tell him his car looks better with some character. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time, it wasn't because of uncertainty. I spent the hours planning, researching, and preparing for war. If Marta wanted to play hardball, she'd picked the wrong opponent. My first stop the next morning was First National Bank, where my old friend Barbara worked as a senior accounts manager. We'd gone to high school together, and she'd helped me set up our financial accounts when Marta and I first got married. Andy, good to see you, Barb said, gesturing for me to sit in her office. What can I do for you? I need to make some changes to our joint accounts. Marta and I are having some marital difficulties. Barb's expression grew serious. I'm sorry to hear that. What kind of changes are we talking about? I wanted to move my direct deposit to a new individual account and remove my name from our joint checking. Leave enough in there to cover the mortgage and utilities, but I want to protect my income. That's absolutely your right, Andy. The joint account requires both signatures to close, but you can certainly remove your access and redirect your deposits. Within an hour, I'd restructured our finances to protect myself while ensuring Marta couldn't claim I was trying to hide assets. Everything was legal, documented, and completely above board. Next, I did some research on Derek Vaughn. Public records were a beautiful thing when you knew where to look. His real estate development company was leveraged to the hilt, with several projects in foreclosure proceedings. The lakefront mansion wasn't his. It belonged to a client who was letting Derek use it as a sales tool. More interesting was Derek's divorce record. His ex-wife had taken him to the cleaners 3 years ago, citing infidelity and financial irresponsibility. There were restraining orders, accusations of maltreatment, and a very messy custody battle over their twin daughters. I found Derek's ex-wife, Jennifer, on Facebook and sent her a carefully worded message about her ex-husband's current activities. I didn't mention Marta by name, but I included enough details about the lakefront property and recent developments to get her attention. That afternoon, I drove to Marta's advertising agency. Creative Solutions occupied the top floor of a downtown office building, all glass walls and trendy furniture that cost more than my car. I'd been there dozens of times for company parties and client events. Jake Turnbull, Marta's work friend and frequent co-conspirator, was standing by the reception desk when I walked in. He looked nervous the moment he saw me. Andy, what brings you here? Marta's not in today. I know where she is, Jake. I'm here to see you. His Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. Me? What about? About how long you've been covering for her affair with Derek Vaughn. Jake glanced around the open office, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of our conversation. Several of Marta's colleagues had stopped working to listen. I don't know what you're talking about, he said, but his voice cracked slightly. Sure you do. You're the one who's been taking messages when she's at the lake house. You probably even helped her come up with some of those fake client meetings. Look, Andy, I don't want to get in the middle of... You're already in the middle, Jake. The question is whether you want to be on the right side when this all comes out. I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of Marta's text messages. His face went pale. She's using you just like she used me. The difference is I figured it out before I lost everything. Jake stared at the phone screen, then looked up at me with something like relief in his eyes. She said you were abusive, he whispered. She said she was afraid of you. Do I look abusive to you, Jake? In 23 years of marriage, have you ever seen a bruise on her? Ever heard her complain about anything worse than me leaving dishes in the sink? He shook his head slowly. She's been planning this for months, hasn't she? The affair, the divorce, probably even some story about me being an unfit husband. She asked me to write down times when you called her at work, said she might need documentation of maltreatment. Maltreatment? For calling my own wife at her office? I laughed bitterly. What else did she ask you to document? She wanted me to remember if you ever seemed angry when you picked her up from work events. If you ever embarrassed her in public or seemed controlling around her friends. And did I? Jake looked miserable. No, you were always really nice to everyone, even when people were kind of rude to you. People like Derek Vaughn? You know Derek. We've met, briefly, in his driveway. Jake's eyes widened. Andy, what are you planning to do? I'm planning to protect myself, Jake. The question is whether you're going to help Marta destroy an innocent man, or whether you're going to tell the truth when the time comes. I left him standing there, looking like a man who'd just realized he'd been backing the wrong horse. The confrontation I'd been dreading came 2 days later. Marta showed up at the house with Victoria in tow, both of them looking like they meant business. We need to talk about the money, Andy, Marta said without preamble. You can't just steal our savings and think you'll get away with it. I didn't steal anything. I protected my income from a wife who's been planning to rob me blind. Victoria stepped forward, her perfectly manicured finger pointing at my chest like a weapon. You're pathetic, Andy. Marta deserves so much better than a middle-aged loser who spies on his wife. And what does she deserve, Victoria? A bankrupt real estate developer with a history of cheating on his wives? Because that's what your boy Derek really is. Derek is successful and sophisticated. He treats Marta like a queen. Derek is 3 months behind on his office rent and about to lose his business license. But I'm sure Marta finds financial ruin very romantic. Marta's face flushed red. You don't know anything about Derek. I know his ex-wife is planning to take him back to court for unpaid child support. I know his company is being investigated for fraud. And I know he's been using that lakefront mansion to impress women because he can't afford a place of his own. You're lying. I pulled out my phone and showed them the public records I'd compiled. It's all right here, Marta. Your Prince Charming is broke, desperate, and looking for his next meal ticket. Congratulations, you found him. Victoria snatched the phone from my hands, scrolling through the documents with growing alarm. This can't be right. Call him and ask. Better yet, ask him why his ex-wife's lawyer has been calling him all week. Marta grabbed the phone from her sister and stared at the screen. I watched her face change as the reality sank in. This doesn't change anything, she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. I still want a divorce. That's your choice. But you're not getting half of everything, and you're not destroying my reputation to make yourself feel better about cheating. I'll tell everyone what kind of man you really are, Andy. How controlling and paranoid you've become. Go ahead, tell them how I worked 2 jobs to put you through design school. Tell them how I supported your career, even when it meant less time with our kids. Tell them how I never once raised my hand to you or even raised my voice until I caught you screwing another man. Victoria grabbed Marta's arm. Come on, let's go. We don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, I agreed. But you do have to live with the consequences of your choices. They left. But I knew this wasn't over. Desperate people did desperate things, and Marta was nothing if not desperate now. That night, my security system sent an alert to my phone. Motion detected in the garage at 11:47 p.m. I pulled up the camera feed and saw 2 figures moving around in the darkness, searching through boxes and filing cabinets. Marta and Victoria had come back for something. I grabbed a flashlight and headed outside, but instead of confronting them directly, I activated the garage's speaker system, another smart home feature that was about to pay dividends. Good evening, ladies, I said, my voice booming from the speakers. Looking for something? Both women froze like deer in headlights. The garage is equipped with motion sensors and cameras, I continued. Smile them for the recording. Andy, let us out of here, Marta shouted. I'm not keeping you anywhere. The door isn't locked. But I'm curious what you thought you'd find in there. My personal papers, she said. Things that belong to me. Like what? Your tax returns, your credit card statements, or were you looking for something you could use against me? Victoria stepped into the light. Open this door right now, or I'll call the police. Please do. I'd love to explain to them why my estranged wife is trespassing on my property at midnight. I heard them whispering urgently to each other, then the sound of the side door opening. They emerged into the driveway, both looking disheveled and angry. This isn't over, Andy, Marta called out. Yes, it is, I replied through the speaker. It's been over for months. You just didn't have the guts to admit it. The town's annual summer festival was the kind of event that brought out everyone who mattered in our small community. Local business owners, politicians, and social climbers all gathered in the park for 3 days of food trucks, craft booths, and networking disguised as fun. I'd been attending for 15 years, usually as Marta's reluctant companion while she worked the crowd for potential clients. This year, I was going alone, and I had a very specific purpose in mind. The festival's main stage was used for everything from high school bands to political speeches. What most people didn't know was that the sound system could be accessed remotely by anyone with the right credentials. Credentials I'd acquired during my brief stint on the festival planning committee 3 years ago. I arrived early Saturday morning carrying a laptop bag and wearing my most innocent expression. The tech crew was busy setting up for the day's events, and no one paid attention to one more middle-aged guy with a computer. It took me less than 10 minutes to connect to the system and upload my presentation. Then I found a good spot near the back of the crowd and waited. Marta and Derek arrived around noon, both dressed like they were attending a country club event instead of a small-town festival. Derek wore a blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary, while Marta had chosen a sundress that showed off her recent weight loss and expensive tan. Victoria was with them, of course, along with a few other people I recognized from Marta's social circle. They looked like a group of people who thought they were better than everyone around them. At exactly 1 p.m., during the lunch break between scheduled events, I activated my presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, my voice boomed from the speakers, I'd like to share a story about situational ethics and the importance of honesty in relationships. The crowd looked around in confusion, trying to figure out who was speaking. On the main stage's large screen, photos began to appear, screenshots of text messages, bank records, and public documents I'd compiled over the past week. This is the story of a woman named Marta Mercer, who decided that 23 years of marriage wasn't enough to keep her from cheating on her husband with a bankrupt real estate developer. I saw Marta's face in the crowd, white with shock and growing horror. Derek was pulling on her arm, trying to get her to leave, but the crowd had pressed in around them. And this is Derek Vaughn, I continued as his photo appeared on screen, a man who uses other people's property to impress women while hiding the fact that he's 3 months behind on child support and facing fraud charges. The crowd was murmuring now, some people pulling out their phones to record the spectacle. I recognized several of Marta's clients in the audience, along with Derek's business associates and my own colleagues from work. But the real villain in this story is Victoria Chen, I said as her photo appeared, a bitter divorcee who convinced her sister to destroy a good marriage because she couldn't stand to see someone else happy. Victoria was screaming something I couldn't hear over the crowd noise and the sound system. Security guards were moving through the crowd trying to figure out where the broadcast was coming from. The moral of this story, I concluded, is that actions have consequences. And sometimes, those consequences are very, very public. The presentation ended and I calmly packed up my laptop. By the time security reached the tech booth, I was already walking toward the parking lot. Behind me, I could hear Marta shouting my name, her voice cracking with rage and humiliation. Derek was arguing with someone, probably his ex-wife's lawyer, who I'd made sure would be at the festival today. I made it to my car just as Marta broke free from the crowd and came running after me. "You bastard!" "You see," she screamed, "you've ruined everything." "No," I said calmly, "you ruined everything. I just made sure everyone knew about it." Derek appeared behind her, his face red with anger and embarrassment. "You're going to pay for this, Mercer. I'll sue you for defamation." "With what money? Your business is finished, Derek. Your clients saw those fraud allegations on the big screen. Your ex-wife's lawyer's probably serving papers right now. And your girlfriend just realized she hitched her wagon to a sinking ship." "Andy, please," Marta said, tears streaming down her face. "We can work this out. We don't have to do this." "You're right, we didn't have to do this. You could have asked for a divorce like an adult. You could have been honest about wanting out of our marriage. Instead, you chose to cheat, lie, and try to destroy me in the process." "I never tried to destroy you." "Really? What about asking Jake to document my maltreatment? What about planning to claim I was abusive? What about trying to steal half my retirement savings to fund your new life with Prince Charming here?" She had no answer for that. Derek stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Well, let's see how smart you are." He swung at me, a clumsy haymaker that telegraphed itself from a mile away. I stepped aside and let his momentum carry him into the side of my car. He bounced off the door and stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder. "Situationally," I said, "you might want to work on your fighting technique before you threaten people." The aftermath was everything I'd hoped for and more. By Monday morning, Marta's advertising agency had terminated her contract, citing conduct detrimental to the company's reputation. Derek's real estate license was suspended pending investigation of the fraud charges. Victoria had fled town, reportedly staying with a cousin in another state. But I wasn't done yet. Tuesday evening, I loaded Marta's belongings into garbage bags, the same expensive clothes and accessories she'd bought for her new life with Derek. I carried them out to the front porch and arranged them neatly by the door, like a sidewalk sale nobody wanted to attend. Then I changed the locks. Marta arrived an hour later, Derek's damaged Porsche limping up to the curb with a grinding noise that suggested expensive repairs in the near future. She climbed out of the passenger seat. Apparently, Derek was too injured from his encounter with my car to drive, and stared at the bags on the porch. "What is this?" she demanded. "Your things," I said through the screen door. "Everything you'll need for your new life? You can't lock me out of my own house. It's not your house anymore. I bought out your half with money from my individual retirement account. The paperwork is in the bag with your shoes." Derek hobbled up the walkway, his arm in a sling from where he'd hit my car. "This is illegal, Mercer. You can't just steal someone's home." "I'm not stealing anything. I'm protecting my investment. Marta signed a prenuptial agreement when we got married. She gets what she brought into the marriage, plus half of what we accumulated together, minus what she spent on her affair. What I spent on my affair? Hotel rooms, restaurant bills, that new wardrobe, the jewelry Derek bought you with money he borrowed against properties he doesn't own. It all adds up, Marta. I'm very good with numbers." She grabbed one of the bags and tore it open, spilling clothes across the porch. "You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you. You did this to yourself." Neighbors had started to gather on their porches and sidewalks, drawn by the commotion. Gosling was in her front yard with a watering can, not even pretending to tend her flowers as she watched the drama unfold. "Please, Andy," Marta said, her voice breaking. "I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling." "The time for counseling was before you started sleeping with Derek. The time for fixing things was before you tried to frame me as an abusive husband. The time for honesty was before you spent months planning to destroy my life." Derek stepped forward, trying to look threatening despite his injuries. "You're going to regret this, Mercer." "Am I? Let's see. My wife is gone, my house is peaceful, my money is protected, and my reputation is intact. Your business is ruined, your ex-wife is garnishing your wages, and you're about to be homeless when that lakefront mansion gets repossessed next week. Which one of us should have regrets?" Derek's face went white. "How did you know about the mansion?" "I know everything, Derek. I know about the fraud investigation, the unpaid taxes, the forged documents. I know about the other women you've been seeing while you were seeing my wife. I even know about the cocaine habit that's been draining your bank account." "That's not true. Ask Jennifer. Your ex-wife has been very cooperative since I put her in touch with your current business associates. Turns out she's been looking for evidence of your pill use for the custody hearing next month." Marta stared at Derek with growing horror. "Cocaine? Derek, you said you only drank socially." "He says a lot of things," I observed. "Most of them lies." Derek grabbed Marta's arm. "Come on, we're leaving. We don't have to listen to this." "Where are we going?" she asked. "You said we could stay at the mansion until we found a place. We'll figure something out." "The mansion is being seized by the bank tomorrow," I said helpfully. "I thought you might want to know." Marta pulled free from Derek's grip. "Is that true?" Derek didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Oh my God," Marta whispered. "What have I done?" "You chose poorly," he said then. "But you did choose. Now you get to live with the consequences." She sank down on the porch steps, surrounded by garbage bags full of her former life. Derek stood behind her, looking like a man who'd just realized his house of cards was collapsing. "If anyone wants a free lesson in situational ethics," I called out to the growing crowd of neighbors, "just ask these two." A few people laughed. Mrs. Gosling actually applauded. Marta looked up at me through the screen door, mascara running down her cheeks. "I loved you once, Andy. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It means you knew what you were throwing away," I replied. "It means you chose to destroy something good for something that was never real." I closed the door and walked away, leaving them on the porch with the ruins of their grand plan scattered around them like confetti. After a parade nobody wanted to attend, through the window, I watched Derek try to comfort Marta while she cried over the garbage bags containing her designer clothes and broken dreams. He kept looking at his damaged car, probably calculating how much the repairs would cost and whether he had enough credit left to pay for them. The situation, as I'd told myself so many times over the past few weeks, was finally handled.